Okay, so welcome everybody to the 7th session of the Seminario Permanente de Doctorado, permanent seminary in doctoral education, something like that. Okay, so today we have what I think will be a very insightful and interesting workshop by Professor Mari Honero. Is that all right?
Oh, wait. It's a third.
Okay.
Mine, it is good.
Mari. Okay. So thank you so much for being here. Also, thank you very much for the people that could make it here in person and for the people that are watching online. We know that we are offering a lot of seminars right now, but we get a lot of interesting proposals and we just cannot say no. So I hope it's interesting for everybody. And yeah, so I'm going to give the word to Professor Laura Camus.
Thank you, Marta. So, well, for those who don't know me, I'm Professor Laura Camas, and I'm related to the Department of Educational Studies. And, well, we have a visiting professor here this month, and she is Mari Honero. And we shared a lunch like 2 weeks ago, and while having this conversation, we thought that it might be a good idea to really have a session with Mari with the doctoral seminar that we have here in the faculty. And that's why we are here today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a small video that I have selected of Mari, so you can know her a little bit more. So Mari Honero is a professor and PhD in education at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, specializing in the relationship between teaching and learning, organizational development in education, and the role of language and gender in these processes. She currently leads 2 research projects. The first one, a systematic review on the concept of reading in education, and the second one, a study on reading practices in doctoral education in the UK and Norway, and that's why we are here, right? Because of this probably second project that she has. She has held several academic leadership roles, including President of the European Educational Research Association since 2023, Editor-in-Chief of the Nordic Journal of Educational Practice, and course coordinator in university. In the university, right? With over 30 years of experience in education, she has worked in teacher education in Northern Norway and has supervised numerous research projects with pedagogy, educational leadership, and professional development. Mari, welcome, super warm welcome to the faculty and again to this group, and I can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to know, I thought we could keep this quite informal. And my experience is that works best in this. And I'd very much like to learn more about your projects. I'll tell a little bit about my project and probably also ask you a little bit about reading in your own projects, because that's something that has started interesting us in this project. But I thought it would be fun first if we could do a round of introduction, and maybe the people online could also, I know it's hard to show yourself, but if you could, that would be nice. And you could also do a short presentation so we know who's talking, and we're happy also to hear from you. But we can start in this room, maybe. I don't know who wants to start. Here? Yeah.
My name is Ricardo, and I'm working on a project with adolescents on digital health. We are co-investigating and intending to co-create with young people. So we are learning about co-creation with young people, and at the same time we want to develop activities, pedagogical activities, pedagogical material for artistic and movement-based games and exercises to do in the classroom in order to understand and remove the effects of the young people regarding their digital health learn how they are being affected by the digital health technologies. Also understanding how it's impacting them. It's so new. It's so new. These new generations, how they're being raised by these technologies. It's working as a public pedagogy, the internet, and there is so little regulation around it. So they're very, very much left to their destiny, and they lack responsible adults around to consult, and we're learning also that in schools they don't do much about it. They don't talk much about what's going on online. So that's the project.
Yeah, nice. Most interesting.
Let's go. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm also a PhD student, and my PhD research is a comparative ethnography in inclusive education, and we are trying to understand how children perceive the concept of belonging and difference. So the comparative ethnography is between Spain and Italy, and now I'm currently doing the field work in a school, in a primary school here near Madrid. And we're trying to, in this process, we're trying to negotiate with the students the research methods and also the research questions.
So do you have very active participants?
Yeah, we use photo elicitation, and we're also, like, we discuss sometimes with the kids, maybe they prefer drawings or they prefer using photo voice, photo elicitation. And also now we're trying to discuss with them also our research questions, because we started with some already decided research questions, and now we are trying to generate new ones with them.
Oh, nice. Really ethnography. That's cool. Should we continue in here and then we'll see if we can get some online resources?
My name is Paloma. I am studying a research focus on critical thinking. Completely, I study two authors who contribute to philosophy, the analytical philosophy discourses, and general the critical thinking movement. Who are they are Harvey Siegel and Israel Sheffield, and I focus on education and the reflections about their approach and the future implications of this thinking.
This kind of analytical thinking quite big in philosophy and in
Not much.
Not much.
No. This is the reason also that this thesis is important.
Yeah. Yeah. You did present yourself.
Yeah, just
For the same work?
to add something, probably my research topic, I'm reading the questions that try to explore the connection between aesthetic experience, democracy, and education. And my dissertation was on Jane Addams. She was a pragmatist philosopher. If you will know by Dewey, they were friends. And yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
You want to say something, Hannah?
Yes, I'm Halvor, Marit's husband. I'm a professor in pedagogy at the same university as Marit has. And I do teacher education. And I do teacher education under my, what I call the pedagogy of love. And it's a way to oppose academic processes to show that the body and the corpse has a lot of meaning when you do education. It's not just reading and writing and words and books that has meaning, but it's what's happening between bodies and persons in the room together. So that's what I work with, and that's what my students and my colleagues work with the students on this master. This is a master program for itself with the same university that Marta. Thanks.
My name is Marta. I'm a PhD student as well. I'm in my second year. And my research is about school success in vulnerable urban environments or high complexity urban environments, and about flourishing as the aim of education and like the practical implications this might have. And currently I'm doing an ethnography, a case study of a certain school in Madrid, and I'm doing observation and talking with the teachers and with the kids, and I also plan to do some interviews with parents and other members of the school community.
My name is David. I'm a PhD student in second year. I do my research in music, didactical music. The goal of the research is enhance the critical thinking of the teens about the visual content of the music, not the music, the visual content of the video clips. And we try to do an quasi-experimental research with didactical materials and pre-test, post-test. It's a quantitative investigation.
You say visual content? That
The
is
visual content of the video,
of video, music videos?
of the music videos.
Ah, cool.
Because it's the music teens the music teens like is the same over 20 years of pop, reggaeton, like kind of music here in Spain. Sometimes the message are not the good enough for values or for the development of the teens.
Is there anyone online who would like to see? Are they? They just want to be listened. I'm happy with that if that's what they want. And that's how it works, and we'll have them in the background. So very happy for those of you who have come and attended. What I suggested doing was to, I can talk a little bit about one of the projects I'm currently involved in, which has to do with reading in doctoral education. It's interlinked with the other project, but they're two separate projects. I have another project which is a big mapping of the understanding of building in education research or in pedagogy rather. So in a way, a lot of what we find out in this project is very much because we come from a pedagogical background as Norwegians, not the UK part of this project, but for us, thinking around reading in doctoral education is also embedded in the thinking around what it means to do doctoral education, what it means to do research, what it means to be engaged in that type of research process. And the background for the project, which is called Reading Time, the place of reading in doctoral education, the background for it is a kind of perception or experience, I'd rather say, that the three of us who runs this project have had over the last years, especially as supervisors in doctoral education, is that through our universities, doctoral students are more and more pushed towards the emphasis is on time, to be on time, you have to be finished, you have to report, special reports, they have to be on time, and this, what we have called here the accelerated university, where this is what the students are pushed for. Very few questions about what is your project, what are you struggling with, how come things when thing takes time, which it does. Anybody who's been in a doctoral project or any project knows that we thought this was gonna go, really, this will be an easy part, and then it just brought you into so many things that, takes time. This is basically what the most of us experience. But our students, we have experienced, some really get stressed in terms of health issues. They're really stressed because they don't have the time. And so we wanted, because reading is, I don't know how it is in schools in Spain, but in reading very much over the last year in education is about how fast you can read. Are you a fast reader or not? If you're a slow reader, you're a bad reader. Basically, that's the message that very many of us get. And so when you are in school, you are often, you go through all these tests to see how fast can you read. And not often expressed, but the underlying assumption is that the faster you read, the better you read, the better you understand, which is false. We know that. That is false. It doesn't add up. But we see, and I see in this project, we have done interviews with 8 PhD students in the UK, in Birmingham, which is Fadia Daka, the principal investigator. And then we have 9 students in our department in education. And that sense of reading comes up from all of them. They have a basic understanding that reading, or they have, we have to go into the findings much more to draw out, because they're very understandings of it. But that understanding of accelerated, that you have to read fast, and that they feel shame that they read too slow, goes to all of them, almost. All of them talk about that as an experience, which is really interesting. For us, really interesting. So they have to fight that in different ways. And at the same time, when our administration, when they ask questions for them to report, and they have to report, I don't know of any project that goes exactly after a project plan. Might be a very mechanical project, but most PhD projects, they will vary, but you have to report on specificities, and that often stresses our students, it seems like, more than it helps them advance their research. So I'll tell you, we have our research question for this project is, how do English and Norwegian doctoral students relate to, make sense of, and engage with reading as a practice, cognitively and emotionally? And we have done, it's kind of a type of experimental project. We've gathered data through 4 different, four different types of or ways. We started with the focus group interview, so it would be like we had you guys here, and for an hour an interview where you started discussing reading in your projects. So we have about an hour focus group interview with all the 3 different cohorts, 2 in Norway and 1 in England. And so through that, a lot of thinking around, and also a lot of how they interrelated to how they had experienced reading in their projects. And these are projects that they're all in education, but still quite different. Some are more quantitative approaches, others are really philosophical, hermeneutical projects. So reading is also very different. And what you're supposed to read, what is it to read a book? In my research, I basically only read journal articles. There's hardly any book reading in my project from those days. And so they discuss also differences. What does that mean? How does that develop my research in relation to this? So we had the first focus group interview. Then we asked all of them just to make a mapping of 1 week of reading. We said, just pick a week, just randomly 1 week from when you in your daily life as a doctoral student, and you just report on reading from that. So it was not finding the week I read the most, or it can be a week that you read very little, but they've written a kind of diary on it. Some of them are quite explicit and really interesting. It talks about, I think, something that most of us who have been in a doctoral project, it's easy to recognize. It was easy to recognize for me because they said, like saying that, okay, tomorrow I had planned, I had put out these articles I was going to read because I thought that would be very informative for my project. And I started on the first article, then I got lost because I started looking for some of the references and suddenly the day was gone. And they hadn't read what they had put up for themselves to read. So things like that, which I think very many of us who have, when you've been in projects like that, you recognize. But it's a kind of knowledge that is not embedded into very much the understanding of what it means to do a doctoral project. So that was the diaries we had, and then we did we called it a narrative interview with each of the students, so about an hour with each of them, where we talked more about reading in their doctoral project, but also about what reading was for them. Because reading is something very much embedded in what has reading been for you from being a child? How do you relate to reading in your own childhood in relation to school? And a really interesting, or an interesting aspect that came up from very many of them was that reading in school was totally useless. Reading in school, didn't learn any from it. My reading, I learned at home. It was something my parents, grandparents gave to me. Engaging in reading books. But school reading, that was basically, because school reading is much more related to, you read fast enough, you read, so there, I can't remember all of them right now, but there's many references to how school reading seems like is a hindrance to developing reading and reading as something that you can develop understanding from. And we think that is interesting. That is very interesting. It's something we need to definitely dig deeper into. So, and I haven't started. I've been at almost all the interviews, except one that we did in Norway, but going through those, and really, there's really a lot of really rich data in that. So we'll try to extract some of that. This is work for the spring. And then as a last project we did with both groups, we did more experimental project based on some work we have done together before around slow reading, which is slow philosophy, slow reading. So understanding that reading is really something slow. You can just take one page, sit together and read. So we did something that we have called Circle of Voices. And we have two very short texts. And these texts, we then, all the students, they had the texts beforehand. And so we did two iterations of them. First, we divided the group into two, so we had two circles, like one inner circle and an outer circle. The inner circle started discussed the first text, and then the outer circle commented on the discussion of the first text. And then we swapped the circles and did the same thing with the second text. And we have videotaped and recorded that too, so that's also data we need to go into, because some other aspects of reading came up in that when we did that. But I think so. Basically, what we have now is a lot of data, which is quite usual for these kind of project. Probably much more data than we will be able to use in this project. This is a project also supported by something called the Review Foundation in the UK. So we will finish and but it's defined as a pilot project, which we think we might, or hope that we might schedule up as a larger international project. But we'll see what happens. First, we need to deal with this. And so, is there anything else I should say about the methodology? Maybe is that our approach to the data and also to the setup of how we conducted the data gathering project is we call it hermeneutic phenomenology, and it's informed by Paul Vickers. Calvin and I have worked quite a bit together. So that's our base for thinking philosophically around text, reading, writing. Alfred Schutz, as a colleague of mine in Norway, she uses him as the base for thinking phenomenologically. And then Talia Dacca, she has a foundation in the and rhythm analysis, close to what Halvor is talking about, more the embodied aspects of reading. So a lot of our data relates to reading as an embodied experience. So that is things that we'll draw out when we start analyzing the findings or the data that we have. That was an aspect. I think what is, as I said, we haven't had time yet to do the analysis that we want to do. But I think based on what I talked about now around reading in doctoral education, I thought maybe it could be interesting to hear from you. How does any of this relate to experiences you have? Does any of this connect with, have you thought around what reading is for you in your projects? Another interesting thing that came up here, for instance, we found out is that most of our students, or I don't think any of them, said that they discussed reading with their supervisors. They never discussed the texts that they read with their supervisors, which is quite interesting, I think. Because that means, so it means reading, when you read as a doctoral student, you basically are on your own. You might, if you're lucky, have organized some reading groups that you read together with some colleagues, but wasn't a lot of that. Maybe one or two go together and discuss a text, but basically you're left on your own. And we think that's something, or what we see just as another, there's something here that could be enhanced and improved dramatically from how it is today. And it seems like this is, that it's not the same in the UK and in Norway. There are some cultural differences to the UK. But some of these things seem to go, be about the same. So maybe just open up and see, how does it feel, guys?
Well, I'm glad you said all this. I mean, about the last thing you just mentioned, like I have a huge critique to do to academic
Yeah.
This is my first PhD. I come from the arts, from embodied practices, theater, filming. And I've been always being inserted. I like to think of myself as an insider in other disciplines.
Yeah.
For example, education, which is what my major is. But I have a huge critique on how much, and I think it's connected and related to what you're saying. Like, I see like there's a tendency to fill your mouth with beautiful theory and books and ideas about embodiment and creative practices and embodied learning, and there is no real interest, no curiosity to really delve into what it means to get in touch with your body, which is also connected to what you were saying first about like this urgency to publish, create your deadline. and I have seen like people are like not even paying attention to how they're breathing while they're saying most of the stuff they're saying and how they're feeling about. And I think it's sometimes very harmful for the health of the people around who are dealing with a PhD, a thesis project. And also, I was thinking about this recently, actually, about reading. Maybe because I read the title of your work. But yeah, I didn't start reading. I started reading when I was like not too long ago. Like in school, I was so bad at reading. I was going online looking for. Rincón del Vago was. Can you believe it? I'm originally from Chile, and that was, I don't know if that existed here. It existed. It was from here. No, but that's where I was going to, like, get all the summaries of the books and whatever. But I do remember when I was learning to read, I do remember that time when I could read something on the street, and I remember telling my mom, now I know what it says, you know? And I remember feeling so excited about now I can read, even though then I didn't start reading. So after I don't know, I feel for me reading, it's actually a very rhizomatic process, and I feel reading, for me at least, gives me the chance to connect with people who are connecting ideas that get open to me opportunities to, again, embody a different way of dealing with a very unequal and hostile world. I think when you are part of a community, maybe you don't feel that you fit into the norm, and I think everybody feels somehow that way, then you start feeling the need to like go. I think books and reading for me, it's as films, as maybe arts in general, songs are openings to another embodied possibilities. For me, that's what reading brings to me. But I see that in the academia, there's little about that. It's more about reading as a critique. I know it might be not everyone, but I see it like, okay, let's read. So we publish about all these beautiful things that nobody is applying in real life, nor letting it adjust anything.
Like just what you just said now, that resonates a lot with what the how should I say, the basic understanding that came through the students that we talked to. When they really engaging in reading for them was exactly what you said there, openings to other possibilities. Because that's when reading becomes meaningful. That's when it means something. It actually means something to you. It means something to me. It means something for the project that I'm engaged in. But this is what they also said. Our Norwegian students, though I have to, they were quite positive also, because they felt they had that possibility. There was they could actually, they had time to do some of it, but still a lot of stress. But so I think what you just said there is for us some of the kind of a core message back into academia. If we wanna pursue and to promote academic careers, we need to take this back, because we're gradually losing those possibilities within academia. So we need to take that back, so we get that time for our students to read, to engage, so that they can see other possibilities. If not, there's no, why do we need academia then? That's what it was supposed to be also, in a more ideal.
Mark, sorry, 1 second. Can we go maybe closer to the microphone, because people online are saying that they can like listen properly.
Yeah.
We can. And you run into
Maybe if you wanna go there.
I can lose.
It's your.
I talk the most. I'll try not to. Some other takes on reading around the circle.
I was also thinking how, because I've read a lot, I would say, throughout like my whole life, but the readings I'm doing now are like another level of readings that I've not been taught, or I've never had experience engaging with before. So if reading itself should be like a slow process in itself, to enjoy the reading, to really get the opportunity to think about what you're reading. When you are engaging with these very like difficult authors who are developing complex ideas, it should even be like slower, but it's like the opposite, because you have to go through them quickly, get the ideas, and like write and produce and meet the deadlines. So yeah, I think there is like a new depth you need to acquire, but there is like less time or more pressure to do so than before.
That's especially one of the students that we interviewed. She's doing a philosophical project and using a lot of hermeneutics, etc., and a fairly deep philosophical project. But she did a reflection during the interview that was very interesting, I thought, and that was that at the beginning she saw that she had this overwhelming feeling that this is just too much. How am I going to be able to penetrate any of that? How is this going to help me develop my understandings? And she says, and of course, as you do often, and they had different ways of making notation techniques, for instance, when you read. Like her, she needed the book. She needed to make notes in the book, because that was her way of reading. That way she could go back into the book. So the book became very embodied in a way, because it became part of her. And now when she looked back on, it was almost 2 years later, she looked back on the reading she had started with and where she was now. And it was like doing, wow, now I see something has happened here. Because some openings had happened in that process. And she hadn't thought about how it had been, this process over 2 years, over a lot of slow reading, a lot of thinking around this, had developed something. She was in a different place now than she used to be. So at least the kind of project she has, there were openings for it, but it was very solitary. That was one thing that. All of it is something she does. They're very, very solitary. And if I understood you right earlier, I think one of the things that we have seen through some other project or more like a project we do together with a group of PhD students that I have, is that we read together. We have a reading group. We've read Berger and Luckman, the social construction of reality now over a year and a half. So it's really slow reading, but we just go through the text together. And we see that the kind of reading that develops in a collective does something that is quite different from the very solitary reading. And you need both. But that kind of collective reading, there's also very little of it in academia, seems like. You have to struggle with it yourself, basically. Yeah. And for some, that becomes really stressful. Really, really stressful.
To me?
No, not to you, but,
Okay.
but like you talked about students, that it becomes a health issue. It becomes a real
Well,
health
yeah,
issue for some.
I was gonna say about the hard reading, and sometimes when you read something that looks so difficult to understand. In this process, and having to read all that stuff too, I've been coming to make peace with the fact that first, I don't need to understand everything, and at the same, and it's okay. I just can move forward. I've seen something I understand that I can connect with. To be okay with not knowing, which is, I think, it's a healthy way of whatever, everything. And at the same time, to losing a little bit, because of the same critique that I was saying, losing respect for words and respect. This is dangerous what I'm gonna say. Losing respect for words and losing respect for human cognition.
Yeah.
So that for me, when I come to writing, sometimes it's like, I don't even know, but I have this feeling. I was like, whatever. And I have these words that are there from glossaries and stuff. And sometimes I mix words without even not knowing where it's going to come out. You know, like as looking at writing also, like writing as a process of like catching stuff from the reading. And it's also like a creative. For me, at least, it makes it more fun and possible to deal with. It's a creative thing that maybe not even myself can understand, which is maybe the person who wrote something very hard to understand, they don't know much of. I don't know. I question everything, but
But I don't think that's uncommon. I think most academic writing is often, and reading is often defined as a very cognitive, rational process. And so, but and part of it is, yes, but below that is a huge kind of, for the moment, how do you say it? Can't find the right word in Norwegian or English right now. Definitely not in Spanish. But it's like a vast fountain of experience, or whatever you should call it. But that this, because both reading and writing is embodied. And when you described reading now, that felt very familiar to me. And when I start reading or start writing an article, I never know where it's going to end. I have an idea. I have some things I've read. I have things I've worked on, depending on what I write. But words are something that you need. It's a creative process.
Yeah.
This is also it's creating something when you write, and that's not I think sometimes we take. If you work on a very statistical, very quantitative project, it's very strict in terms of how you set it up and how you define things, and then things are just one-to-one. But the project you described are projects that they're not structured that way, and so. You work with understanding, you work with intuition, you work with something different in terms of when you develop the research. It's very, very different. And those aspects of doing research are often not talked about, or they're not talked about. Is my situation.
Last thing I want to say, I'm going to shut up now. Last week we had, what was the name who came last week? It was awesome. Yeah, and he was teaching us about writing, and then he mentioned writing as a learning process too. So I think it connects with the fact we're creating, also when we are writing, like learning, it's a mysterious adventure if you want to. And maybe writing, you don't even know what you have learned until you just let yourself like put something into words and see like, oh, I don't know.
Yes.
It resonated with what you
Yes.
want to shut up.
Some other thinking around what we talked about? I'm just looking like, yeah, come on.
I wonder what is the size of the circle of writing and writing.
Yes, say something more.
Okay, I've been reading for 2 weeks, 3 weeks of arts in international papers, articles, okay, and writing. And when I write, I need to read.
Yeah.
And when I read, I need to write.
Mhm.
And there's something like the idea of this is the correct size of the cycle.
Yeah.
I try to write and read, write and read. No, okay, I read very much, I need to write. Okay, I read very much, I need to connect this idea with this idea and this. I need to read an article for this idea. I have my trees of ideas and articles and whatever. And now I'm struggling with okay, where is the time to stop?
When it's the time to stop, yeah. When is it enough, yeah.
Stop writing, stop reading, stop.
Yeah.
I don't know if you understand the.
I think, or I can try to reiterate some of what you said, but I think what you described is very much alike some of the things that our students talked about. And they talked about, all of them had they were struggling with different things. They had different ways of trying to, how they were trying to work between reading and writing. First, many of them talked about the different ways that they took notes while reading. Like this one I talked about, she read basically books, and she wrote in the books because then they talked about, if I have read a book and written in the text, even when I have articles, I need to, those that are important for me, I have to print them out because and this is tactile, I think. Just you have to have the paper, you have written on the paper, and you've marked with different colors, and so because then that text becomes part of you because you remember that text in a way that you can bring it back into your research and what you're doing. So there are different ways of note taking. Some of them used basically digital, I don't know the program, it's called Obsidian, then there was OneNote. So they used different digital programs to take notes. One of our students, he was a very avid note taker, so he wrote a lot while he was reading, so he had a lot of text written. He had a problem using that back into his own writing, he talked about. So when you talk that movement between reading and writing, we haven't emphasized it that much in the questions we asked, but it came up. It seems like there is no answer to what is the right way of doing it, because it's individual. So we do this in different ways. But the process is recognizable for most. And all that question around when is it enough? When is this good enough? Is a question that everybody raises. Sometimes I think, or it sounds like, or then I can talk from my own experience too with doctoral students, is that is very often the question that we discuss in supervision. Because text is brought into the supervision and we start discussing the text, and then if, like say, one passage of the text, one chapter has gone through several iterations, you've gone back and you have been in this process, gone back and forth, and then I know for myself in supervision that I sometimes, this is good enough. Now move on. because, because there is something to text where it's kind of a never-ending process. You can always change it, but I think it's what Robert said earlier. Since this is a creative process, writing is a creative process. So when you start writing, the text starts to take on meaning, but it also starts to instruct you in a way. So the text in itself becomes, when it is created at a certain point, that's what I usually say to my students. It's as good as it is as good as it got this time, and it's good enough for now, depending on where you are in the process. It might be that, okay, you leave that for now and you go on, and then when you look at the overall, you might go in and do some smaller changes in it, but that's how it ended up. If you were to change that, you would have to go back to the beginning again, start all over. And
just to add, Marta, I totally agree with what you are saying. And I want, because I'm gonna leave in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something. Because sometimes what I found in my doctoral experience is that there are many questions that I ask to myself through the doctoral dissertation research.
Mm.
That means questions like, is that enough? Sometimes I ask myself, am I asking this to myself? I mean, as a person in itself, not as a researcher, but am I enough? Right? So there is a kind of psychoanalytical, I would say, analysis in all these questions that we are discussing. I think in the process of research, the self, it's the research on the self, right? On the researcher is really present there. So I think that's why the process of reading is so stressed. It's so difficult. It's so vulnerable because you are reading to yourself in these readings too. So it's complex to really, I don't know. That's what I thought with your questions.
And I think what that tells me, and I think also what our project some of the conclusions from our project is that because these processes in a doctoral, in a PhD process are vulnerable, also for yourself, you need more processes in the doctoral the process where there are some more collective engagement. It's presenting to each other, it's reading together, it's also supervision that really helps make you certain that, okay, this you've done good work now. This holds up. Okay, see you. And this holds up. This will work. And make you certain that, okay, this is enough. And I think for me, that's where the supervision is really important, because I have some students are so self-critical. They're nothing is good enough. And so you really have to, I had one of them, I really had to tell her, okay, now you stop. You're not allowed. This text, done. You go on. If not, she would just keep on and keep on and keep on and keep on. So, but you are different, like any other. We are different. So there is no one way. And also depending on the type of project you have.
It's personal. It's personal.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel, okay, that's it's here. I have to stop here. Or reading or writing an idea on text, okay, it's here. Sometimes it's a feeling.
I think it's a very vulnerable process, as you said, but in the academia, I feel like there's no space for vulnerability. Like, we all are vulnerable. I think like we are, I feel that like sometimes I read at home alone and I feel ashamed because I don't understand what I'm reading. And I think like I'm not enough for the PhD because I'm not understanding what I'm reading, but I feel I cannot come to the university and tell this to other people because I think it's like you cannot show your vulnerability to other people in the academia because then you're not good here enough. I think so. Like I feel this way.
Yeah. And what you say now, and I can, based on this project and based on a lot of other type of supervision, there's so many of us. Even also as a professor, you feel that you can have been. I've been a professor for many years now. I published a lot, but still, that feeling can come. Still, that feeling arises in you in doing this kind of work, and we talk very little about it. And we, but I have been in processes where we deal with it in terms of being able, like when we have reading groups, for instance, working on a text. The basic is that here we ask questions towards what we struggle with, what doesn't immediately make meaning, and that way through the collective reading, the text opens up in a different way, and there is no, as if you can get a reading group to go where there is no one that kind of sits on the was it faucet is called in English, it's the kind of the key to what is the right, there is no right reading. There is reading and there is understandings of the text, and it can be manifold. Then you can get at least around that, some of that vulnerability. But this institution is a very...
I think it's very difficult to not destroy, but to change the institution.
Yeah.
Like maybe I have a question, but I'm not asking that question because I think I should not ask that, because not the place to ask this, it's not the right moment to ask this, maybe it's too stupid, this question to ask. So it's difficult also to create spaces like maybe a reading group or something like this, because there are always some like
hierarchy
behind everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even if we try to change it, but there's always, it's very difficult to change it.
I think that is, and that's, it's not special for Spain. It's all over where academia is, worldwide, seems like. You can make pockets for different kinds of practices, but the culture of the academia is extremely hierarchical. And but I know there are pockets. I know there for fact are pockets. Since I work, like they said in the introduction, I'm president of the European Educational Research Association. And we focus a lot on capacity building for younger researchers. So we have, I don't know if any of you have been to the Emerging Researchers Conference, which is 2 days before the Easter conference. There's a Emerging Researchers Conference. And you've been there?
No, I read about it.
Yeah, so I invite you to come. You should. This year probably it's too late to put in an abstract, but next time we'll be in Tampere in Finland. And on that conference, there's huge. I mean, last year it's been really huge. It used to be like 150 now. Now sometimes there's up to 500 emerging researchers. But we have been able to build a culture on this conference where it is about capacity building. It's about supporting younger researchers so that when you send in an abstract to be presented at an international conference, and I hear that all of you speak good English, so no problem, then the idea behind the chairing is usually experienced professors that come, but it's to help develop the project. And I know for a fact also that among the emerging researchers, a lot of networking happens, and a lot of you meet people from Finland or Serbia or Italy or wherever, that work with some of the same questions that you do. So it helps build capacity in building a network with other younger researchers. And then, so you have the Emerging Researchers Conference, but we also have a summer school each year.
Yeah, I applied, but I'm in the waiting list.
So you're on the waiting list, okay? But maybe I'll see you there. There's usually people falling off, always.
There's
Yeah.
possibilities.
Yeah, you always is.
I hope so, I hope so.
I hope so. I'll see you then, there then. But that also is I have had it myself for 2 years, my way back 10 years ago in Trondheim, but it's been going on for many years now. And also the culture there is built on the same thing. So we know about the vulnerability, we know how difficult it's been, and it's becoming more and more difficult to being an emerging researcher in academia today. So to give support and build networks with other researchers we see as very important. Then we can support each other instead of trying to, There are a lot of those conferences where the main thing is about stepping on others to see how high you can get. It's like, we call that when we were kids to play the king on the hill. So who can be up there and keep everybody down. But we tried to counter that some. And I know at least these are two of these pockets, where you can experience something different. How long do you want to keep on? How long do you usually go?
I mean,
Yeah, I'm free, so I'm here, so I'm happy to talk. You haven't reading in your project, how's that? A lot, yeah.
I was thinking about reading in a critical thinking way. I remember that, I don't know if you know Richard Paul. He's a critical thinking author. Richard Paul. His husband his wife is Linda Elde.
Yeah, I know that
She's
name.
also an author.
Mm.
And he writes a book about critical thinking reading, or reading in a critical thinking way. I don't remember the title. And he presents some states that maybe how do you explain? It's a very close process, and I don't agree with that. He tries to do some categories for abilities to critical thinking, dispositions to critical thinking, the ways that you can teach critical thinking, and this type of this way of understanding.
Oops, sorry. I'll turn it off. I hear it's my phone.
Turn off. Bad.
It's a very high music.
Yeah.
Hey, daughter, call back. Okay. Go ahead, sorry.
I believe that this way to understand critical thinking and reading, like a dialogical process with yourself and with others, like you said before, is very close. Maybe you can find some stage to have a purpose. The first stage I remember that he said is, what purpose do you read this text? And maybe do you have a purpose? And if you read this text 2 years ago, 2 years before, or 2 years ago, sorry, then you can find that this text can show you different ideas that you can't find before, because you will change. So I believe that reading is it's a dialogical process, like he said, but it's difficult to find some stage, and that hope that if you continue this stage, you are a critical reader. I am not agree. I don't agree with that idea. But I find this book interesting to understand what it implies to write and read in a deep way or.
And I think that
I am very skeptical about critical thinking in reading and writing because this is the way that you can construct your arguments and your thinking. We are always thinking and we never think about thinking. It's the same as reading. We are always reading, but we usually don't think about reading. And in this we feel that it's a requirement to have a completely stages to become a critical reader. But I believe that this is an utopia. Like to be a critical thinking. What is a critical thinking? It's a very, very complex question. And you can find an exactly stage and exactly objectives or purpose that you can continue in a line. Critical thinking is not a line that like always is said, it's not a logical process. It requires a epistemic virtues, positions to be critical, the spirit to be critical, and something more deep. And this is the way that I also understand reading in this case, and writing, which is related.
But and do I understand you right then when you say that that critical thinking, you can make an instruction for that?
Yeah.
So I tell you, you want to be a critical reader, okay, you follow this instruction and you will become. It doesn't work that way, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
But you said something about thinking about reading. We read, but we don't so often think about reading or think about what we do when we write. And I think this, exactly what you said there, thinking about what we do when we read this, that was what triggered all the participants in our project, because we asked them this reflexive question. Can you talk to us about how you think about your own reading? And most of them said that, wow, I haven't thought much about that. That's just something we do, but I'd really like to engage in that question because that's interesting for me. Because I want to learn more about how I think about how I read. And I think, so for us in a way, on a reflection on the project that we've done, we see that just posing those questions did something with this group. And we haven't done real evaluations or asked afterwards, but they told, especially in the interviews that we had, about how interesting it had been to be part of this project, because it had taught not only because they had thought about their own reading process, but also hearing about the reading processes or from all the others, and learning that, okay, like you said about this circle that you called it between reading and writing, and your description of that would be some other picked up and developed and said, but yeah, it's kind of like that for me too, but and they would develop it further, and that it gave everyone in the discussions a lot of thinking about how it is to read and what it is to read in there as part of their own project. And I think, I think so. That's not our idea. Is definitely not to give an instruction and tell. Now we can give you. Now we can give you a course, probably 20-hour course maybe, on how to read in doctoral education. No, that's not it. I don't think that's, because we have those. I don't know if you have them in this university, but in Norway we have these courses, especially in relation to writing, where it's these crash courses on how to. This is how you do. And before the exam, there are these memorizing courses. This is how you learn to memorize to be able to reiterate what you need on your exam. And they're very, most of it is very superficial. It's very instrumental, thinking that just do this, and you've done it. So, yeah, but I think gaining more knowledge around what this means in, I mean, these kind of projects is, that I think is, I think it also helps supervisors like me, Halvor, and others to be better supervisors, because I think there's a lot to be developed on that side. It can help students to maybe see how we can maneuver in this area where things are very vulnerable. Halvor and I have written a lot together. And we know each other quite well after 40 years. So, and I can tell you that still, it wasn't long ago, he gave me a text, and it's the same the other way around. And he's really nervous because I'm going to read it and give feedback on it. It goes both ways. So that vulnerability is part of kind of the existence of this kind of work. It's there because it is personal. It's deeply personal what we do. And so when you put it out there for others to comment on, to give feedback on, yeah, that is scary. That is scary. So, and for me, it's always been, okay, how do we then try to facilitate this so that we acknowledge the vulnerability and try to help each other develop. For me, that's the basic idea of what we should do in academia. Doesn't always happen, but I'd like it to happen. I know it can happen in good situations. That I know, because I wouldn't have been here if it hadn't happened, and that's for sure.
We have some questions from the online people.
Yes.
Vanessa is asking if there are any, do any methodologies to approach reading exist, and maybe what useful things or insights can we take from this more methodical way of approaching reading. And she also says that she feels a huge anxiety because she feels like she doesn't have enough time to read everything she should be reading, like as of I imagine. So she asked, how can we deal with this anxiety?
Yeah. I can tell Vanessa it was? Vanessa, yeah, that she shares that anxiety with a lot of students. And just as a kind of I think it was an interesting fact that came up in this project. We found out that this anxiety has some cultural aspects. And I don't know how it is in Spain. It was a little bit different in Norway, but in Britain, reading is something that is culturally connected with the upper classes. The upper classes can sit in a chair, take a book, and read. And that's expected of them because they can engage in that kind of activity. But if you come from the more labor part classes, you're not supposed to do that sort of thing because that's not connected with your class expectations. So a lot of the British students talked about the feeling ashamed, feeling that this was wrong, this is something they shouldn't do, sitting down and reading. So that they tried to hide because they didn't want to show people that they were reading. So, and I think this talks to this anxiety that Vanessa talks to, I recognize this a lot, and I think myself is a better example. I definitely recognize it in myself over my career, the anxiety. I've never read enough. I go to these phil-event conferences where there's quite hierarchical and a lot of people that display a lot of authority in being very well read. They have read most of what is needed, and they can talk about it, and their names just coming out like this, and you really feel, but I don't know that. So, and I think so. You need to find ways to come around it. I think because there's no way. A lot of people name drop. if you start looking, those who really try to or push anxiety into people, look at their work, look at what they're doing. They name drop, they cheat, they they cheat, they name drop, they do a lot of what you shouldn't do. They just they put in a lot of references they never read. Because we have one doctoral dissertation at my institute, for instance. He's now a professor. I don't know how many references he has in his dissertation, but together we figured out that to be able to read all those references, he would have needed more than his whole life. So there's no way he has read all that. There's no way he can't have read it. And there's a lot of that in academia. There's a lot of putting in a lot of references. If you have more references in an article, it's as if per se an article with 50 references is better than one with 5. Some think that. It's just BS. It doesn't hold up. It's a virus that has spread in academia. That you need 5 if you write a sentence, you need 5 references. You don't. It's actually really bad academic work. So there's a lot we need to clean up in this. And I think what she talks about anxiety comes from some of that, the idea that you haven't read enough. So I want to go back to, I think part of the core of this project is more about where is my understanding? How can I develop my understanding of what I'm reading in relation to the project that I'm developing and doing? I think that is, if you do focus on that and forget that you haven't read it all, because you never will be able to. None of us are. You read some things that you read really well over the course of working on a dissertation or a PhD. You will read something really well that you'll really engage with deeply, and that will be you for the rest of your life, because you build your academic base there, and from that you can build on later on if you continue working in academia, and then it's more it's a type of process where it becomes meaningful. At least that's how it became meaningful for me. She asked about methodology approach to reading. There's no instruction I can give you, if that's what you're asking for. There is no instruction how to do it. But there is methodology in the terms, like I think I said earlier, that I have a take on reading that comes from Paul Ricoeur, which is an understanding of reading, which as a process where it's dialogical, like you said, but he calls it a threefold mimesis. So it's a prefiguration, configuration, refiguration, meaning that when you have a text, that text has become independent from the author, because now it's a text. And we all read texts that some of them are living authors, some of them are dead many, many years back, but we read the texts. So all of us, we engaged as readers with the text. And that meeting between you and the text is a process where things happen, if you let it. It's not a decoding process like we sometimes in school tend to work on it, as if you were just to decode what's in the text. A lot of the students we interviewed struggled with that also. So the meeting between the reader and the text is dialogue, to put it that way, where things can happen, where the text open up to you. It has a possibility of opening up your understanding of what you're reading about. And through that, refigurations can happen. See, new meanings can emerge through that. And in a way, that's kind of the basic methodology of what reading can be. In our project, for instance, the students, they differentiated between this kind of reading, which is more related to deeper reading, and strategic reading. Because they could, and I think most students today in their project do a lot of strategic reading. You have a research question, you have theory, methodology parts, and you go strategically to the articles that are related to the research you're doing. You read the abstracts, you eliminate, these are not necessary, I end up with these. Okay, these are relevant for me. I pick these, I look at their finding, I look at their, and I just, so you kind of, this is a process where you just pick and choose, this is relevant, this is relevant, this is not relevant. And first, I should be probably a little bit careful here now, but because there are, and I've read quite a few dissertations over the years, there are quite a few dissertations that are very much are kind of based on very much strategic reading, I would call it. And also like our students talked about here. Because especially in some of the empirical sciences, how it has developed, it's very much about finding a gap, making a literature review, finding a gap, and then position yourself, and and then depending on how good the project is set up. But some are quite thin. I have to say that, because there's two, they are a little bit too, they're a little thin in terms of how deep they dig. And then there hasn't been a lot of deep reading, but a lot of strategic reading in terms of just, I tend to call that sampling. And our students here also talk, some you need to do, some is necessary just to position yourself, point to other research that is relevant. But in at least our Norwegian students, the projects that they were engaged in, there was also more deeper engaging into the phenomenon that they were, like if that was music, they would dig digger into it to elicit much more deeper understanding of what is this about. And I think also most of our students then, they said that is the fun part. That's where things take on meaning. That's when the project becomes something that it's meaningful to me, because I talk about something that makes meaning to me. And then some of that vulnerability is yeah, it kind of, you can park it a little bit, at least.
Are they on education students?
They're all in education.
I was wondering if they were from different disciplines.
Not in this first part of it. Maybe we are thinking that maybe because of being in education, there's a lot of quality, or there was one quantitative, but basically qualitative projects and related to education. And I would assume if you're an engineer and doing a doctorate in physics, in chemistry, architecture, yeah, some of you here are in the arts, reading might be different, but we don't know yet. So that might be part of when we follow up this project, then we might bring in some more students just to see how things vary, probably. There might be some differences, but I think there will be quite a few commonalities. I think there's something basic there in terms of what it means to read.
And did you see any other differences based on the culture of the students? Like,
We haven't been able, or we haven't had time yet to look at it. There is, of course, one is just doing a PhD in Spain and Norway is very different because I think all of these are on a program which is called a professional PhD. They're kind of like the students that Halvor teaches now, they are teachers. They're full-time or part-time teachers, so they work in school and doing a PhD. And so their time constraints is really, really tough. And they, at the same time, they are in UK universities, which is, if governance has been hard here and in Norway, England are a few steps ahead of us. They are really, it's really the governance in the university and on the students and on performance is really tough. So that causes types of anxiety and stuff that we just briefly talked about that are different. Our students in Norway have 3 or 4 times 4-year scholarships. So they have applied through a process, been picked out, and have then, if they have a 4-year scholarship, they have 20% or 25% teaching in their position. So they will work with students, supervise, lecture, etc. Do seminars very often. If they have a 3, it's a full-time research, and it's full-time. So they talk about their PhD as their job. I don't know how that is for you. You talk about your PhD as your job, or are you engaged in teaching in schools? Or it's full-time. But and using full-time, I don't talk about, but basically the project are full-time. Are they? Or no? So
I say self-employed, and I'm a teacher,
Yeah.
and I doing the PH half-time.
so you do it on half-time. Yeah. So that's kind of like the British students. Yeah. Do you get how do you say? Are you sponsored to do the PhD, or no? It's just self-financed. Is
Yeah,
that-
it's self-financed.
So it's self-financed. Yeah. We can't do those projects at all. You're not allowed. Our universities, our government has decided it has to be. So that means there's only a certain amount of PhD positions.
But in fact, you can do it, but it's not a position, because you pay yourself.
Yeah.
But you're not.
Yeah, you
The-
can do it in Norway still.
Our programs on our faculty are not allowed to admit those students. I've tried a couple of times because I've had students who wanted to do it like you, and the answer is no, not allowed, because it's just the system. System is different. But the rest of you are on full-time, like a full-time scholarship, or yeah.
My situation is different. Maybe we should stop recording. No, I came, I'm supposed to say I am full-time. It's because I pushed to be in the project. I came from Chile because it's an ID project. It's a bigger project funded by the ministry that leads a teacher from the university. And I was looking for a place to do my PhD, and then we made match. And then I came for the first year by my own means. Right now I have a short contract, which ends, and yeah, I have my opinions of my critiques. But I am from Latin America, so I have a lot of critiques. You wanna shut up?
That's good. We need to hear those. That's important. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, we
See.
some more questions from online, or
Another person, Rania, is saying, I am also a teacher and I work on my PhD half-time.
yeah. So yeah, you have both. You'll have both here.
I feel like.
But you're in the same program. You're in the same. In UK, there are 2 different programs. So you have a professional PhD, which means teachers would go and do a professional PhD because it's not a research PhD, to put it that way. It's research, but the research is meant to feed back into the school and development of the school, while the academic PhD
is training you for academic to work in the university?
It's two ways.
I also have another different situation because I'm a teacher in Italy. And so I have like, I don't know, I looked at how you say this in English, but I don't know. Leave of absence, working leave, like I have.
Short leave.
Leave of
Short
absence.
Yeah, short leave, like.
Short leave, maybe short leave.
Yeah, but leave of absence is as you have, this, your school have given you time,
Yeah, to do the PhD.
but they take away your wages too, or do you have a full wage? Do you have, you still have full earnings as a teacher?
Yeah, I have earning as a teacher, but I have to finish the PhD in the legal time of the
Yeah,
PhD.
yeah.
Or I have to get back them all the money. So.
But that is very close to how these British students have it. They're under those kind of contracts. Our Norwegian students is different.
And then if you finish the PhD, either, or you find a job in a public university, it has to be public, not private university, or I have to go back to Italy for 2 years to work in the school.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so you have
So the school is like the government pays me,
Yeah.
not the school, but the Italian.
but your PhD will qualify you also for work in university.
Yeah, it's the normal one,
yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
like them. We
Yeah.
have all the same program, but the Italian government is financing my PhD.
Financing your PhD. Yeah.
Because here in Spain, we don't have the professional program.
No, I think Laura said you have one program.
One program.
Yeah, same, we have one program also.
And then some people have a scholarship or contracts, but I think not a lot of people, because we don't have a lot of investing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So if anyone wants to add something else online,
I have a question.
okay.
Okay. Perhaps a silly question, but
I like silly questions.
okay. What is the way to read in a PhD?
The way to read in a PhD. It's a big question. I don't know. That's my best answer. But you need to read, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's about it. We need to read. So you need to
I
read.
know, every day.
What do you, if you were my, you now entered my office and we started to discussing your PhD and you came with that question, what would I say? I'd probably, because it's a valid question, definitely, because many of the students that we get also in Norway, they don't have, and that's what these the PhD students in this group also talked about, that they had very little training in reading, so they didn't know how to approach reading. So they felt very the anxiety and all that in terms of so how do I approach this? So I think I would, if I were your supervisor, then I'd say that, okay, let's look at your project. What are the things you're asking in your project? What is it that you would like to find out? And we would probably spend some time on discussing and talking around what is it that your project is about, because that usually takes quite a bit of time to develop. And then based on that, we would probably start, we would talk about what have you read? What's your base? Where do you come from? What did you do in your master's? What engaged you when you read? So it would be a process of finding where would be a good place to start to read for you. And I think something that many of our students in this project talked about was that reading was really engaging when you read stuff that made meaning to you. So you have to have that kind of interest with you into starting reading. So don't start reading all the stuff that you think you have to read, because that's usually boring. And often it's a lot of stuff that you think you have to read because somebody said it or something. It could be that there is interesting stuff in it, but often there's a lot of, like for some of these students in the projects, there's a lot of methodological methods, things. I hate it. I never liked reading that kind of stuff. So, well, don't start there then, because that'll just be very discouraging. So start with, and usually there's something that triggered you in doing this project. Start digging there. Who's written about this? Are there some theories that are very central to it? Let me read more about that. And hopefully, because you have a supervisor that is related to the field that you're doing research in, they will have some knowledge and can help you, point you to, there's some interesting stuff here, yeah. And start digging there. And then usually, I think what students in this project talked about and also resonates a lot with me is that reading takes you in places that you can't anticipate beforehand. It just kind of is when you're interested in reading and finding out stuff, it kind of just drives itself in a way, because you start reading something and you see, oh, where did these ideas come from? And you start looking in the references, okay, this is what I need to go there and look. And you follow up. Sometimes you end in a dead end, and sometimes, like our student, I really found that diamond, I found that treasure. That really, really helped me. Wow, it became the central part of my project. So it's kind of a discovery process. And several of them talked about that. And that resonates a lot with me. So it's just finding help to find a start. And it starts with interest. Start with something that is motivating to you. So I think it's my best answer. Because
So very good answer. Very good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have another question from Rania.
Yeah.
She says, what I most struggle is being alone in the process of reading and deciding which articles should be included. Even having decided inclusion and exclusion criteria, sometimes I would need to be part of a team where we could discuss the relevance or not.
Yeah.
Could you recommend me any strategy to copy with that?
Well, she has it herself. You need a team. You need a team to discuss it. And if nothing else, at least your supervisor. We have a team, a supervisor team. If not, and I know in some cases that is a lack. The time with supervisors in some cultures. I don't know how it is in Spain. I know, for instance, in Germany, you have very, very limited time with it. So your supervisor isn't really someone you can discuss with. We don't have a lot of time in our system either, but we have a little more time. But if supervisor group isn't, find someone build a group of researchers, build together. There's so many PhD students here. Laura said 200. There must be someone else who does similar things, or doesn't have to be the same even. Go together and work together. That collaborative work will help all of you. And discuss and help each other out. Because there are some loners who can do everything by themselves and be really excellent. But for the most of us, we need help from others. And I think that's 95% of us. I'll leave 5% for the singular excellent people. There are some of them. But most, we need the collaborative, collective work. Go to conferences is another. Go to like all of these big societies, like there's also early, have Jura, they're called, the ESERA, which is for early childhood education, all of them have early career researcher group, and those are usually good groups to engage with, because people will be engaged in similar things, and they can help. Hey, because when Diana was her name, yeah, that question, she has that question, and it's brought up in the conference with other younger researchers. There will be someone who say, hey, you know what I did? This is what I did. And then the third one said, okay, but I did it this way. That is giving confidence and helping in ways of solving it. So use community, use the community, collaborate. That will help. Okay,
Okay.
shall we say okay? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting late. Yeah, but thank you, all of you, and online for questions and all, and please for coming. It was really fun talking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.